question. The answer order is Ian, Sharma, Faiza, Paul and Josh. Major concerns have been raised about racism, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and some of you have begun to comment on that already. So the question is, how will you tackle all forms of racism equally? Ian.
It is very important, obviously, that throughout that we respect those that we don't always agree with, those who practice their religion differently from ours, and those whose opinions we may find unpalatable. The reality is, when it comes down to racial tensions, I have to tell you now that the rise at the moment of anti-Semitism is deeply worrying to me. And also the rise of Islamophobia is also worrying. And I know the roots lie in where we have been with the conflicts in the Middle East, but the truth is, here in the UK, we have a record and a history of tolerance. And that tolerance must remain our watchword throughout. So all of the programs that the governments have set up, all together across all parties, to bring people together in the schools and in the communities, must be redoubled. At this time, we have never been more under threat of explosions of violence on the streets, on that regard, with our intolerance to individuals. So those of us who believe in tolerance, freedom of speech, but respect, need to make sure that we do our level best to give schools the funding they need for that. For all of those areas in the community that need it, we have to tackle it and confront it wherever it is and tell it that that cannot exist in the United Kingdom.
Thank you for the question. Racism is that better? That's worse. Make sense. So racism in our society is difficult for all of us in some way, shape or form. A few weeks ago, I don't know whether many of you saw the Channel 4 series of documentaries called Defiance about the experience of the Asian communities who came here in the 70s and early 80s. My father is when he came here from India, and he couldn't watch more than the first half of the first episode because it was so traumatic for him, because of the racism that he experienced in that period. Now, 40 years on, his daughter, his granddaughter, are still experiencing racism in some way, shape or form. Whether it's misogyny, whether it's racism, it's still there, hidden. Whether it's in our institutions or whether it's in our public discourse. I've been called a Hindu nationalist during this campaign by virtue of being born of Indian and Hindu descent. And that has to stop. And the way that we stop it are two ways. Calling it out and challenging it and being unafraid to do so, and stand with your friends, stand with the people around you. If they're calling something out as racism, if they're calling something out as anti-Semitism, if they're calling something out as Islamophobia, believe them and stand with them and challenge the hate. Secondly, we have to think about education. Now, I'm very hopeful. Our young people, my daughter is 15, they don't see colour, they see character, and we have to keep promoting that. Promote education in our institutions, promote education in our schools about tackling hate. Whether it's LGBT hate, whether it's racial hate, whether it's ethnic hate, whether it's gender hate. We have to be thinking about how we challenge it and how we educate people. That's the only way we do it.
The issue of racism is so deep, it really says who will survive childbirth, who will get excluded from school, who will get put in prison. Who will get the job. It's in every part of our society. It's seeped into our policy making. You can see it in our immigration policy. Who is pointed out to leave this country? You can see it in our politics. And so what we need to do is top to bottom to look across our economy and our policies to make sure that those things are reversed. It's systemic, that's what they mean. That it's not just a matter of who calls someone a name in the street, as horrible as that is and as much as that needs to be tackled, that it's sometimes just done unconsciously, some people think, but consciously it's there. We are socialized often to see people as differently, and that's terrible. And so, in terms of what we need to do, we absolutely need to challenge racism, anti-Semitism, we need to bring our communities together, we need to do the education, but more than that, we need to make sure that legislation is there so people can stand up for themselves, and when we see these disparities in data about who's going to prison for the same crime, we call that out and we say that's going to end, enough. It's It's gone on for too long. If this was really a fair country, then that wouldn't happen anymore.
Yes, racism, totally and utterly unacceptable. But then legislation and government have not helped the situation. When they're allowing adverts for a specific gender or colour to be published and shown. All jobs and positions should be open to all, regardless of race, religion, anything. That's what I believe, and I think that it should be encouraged, as has been said earlier, in schools, that you don't see colour, you know, treat John as John, not as coloured John or white John, which is quite easily done if encouraged. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for this question. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are both hate crimes. It's as simple as that. They need to be treated as such. The police need to be empowered to treat them as such. They are not part of this country's rich tradition of protest. They need to be policed as hate crimes, and the courts need to be given the resources they need to clear the backlog of these crimes. That said, something that's not currently a hate crime is misogyny. Misogyny is not currently classified as a hate crime. Under the Liberal Democrats, that would be the case. We would make sure that we would include it as a hate crime, and that we were giving the police the resources to prosecute as such, and the courts the opportunity to deal with the backlog. Thank you very much. To deal with the backlog, while also having the resources they need to support survivors. We would make sure that we would also develop a comprehensive race equality strategy that examine the deep-seated roots and effects, I think, of these hate crimes in our economy, in housing, in education, and in criminal justice. And we would also help more people enter the world of work by increasing the employment rights available to disabled people, such as giving them the automatic right to work from home unless there was a good business reason why that would not be possible. Thank you very much.
We've got up to 3 more questions, depending on how quickly we get through. But thank you all for keeping so much to time. First question, can you say what you think the most pressing environmental issues are for this constituency, and what would you do in Parliament to tackle them and the global climate emergency? The order is Faisal, Ian, Paul, Sharma and Josh.